Dinner at the Ackerman household was pretty much like dinner in any other large household I had ever known. Everybody talked at once, except for Sleepy, who only spoke when asked a direct question, and nobody wanted to clear the table afterward. I made a mental note to call Gina and tell her she'd been wrong. There really is no advantage that I could see in having brothers. They chewed with their mouths open and ate every single Poppin' Fresh bread roll before I even had one. After dinner, I decided it would be wise to avoid my room and give Jesse plenty of time to make up his mind about whether he was leaving with or without his teeth. I'm not a big fan of violence, but it is an unfortunate byproduct of my profession. Sometimes the only way you can make someone listen is with your fist. This is not a technique espoused, I know, by the diagnostic manuals in most therapist shelves. Then again, nobody ever said I was a therapist. The problem with my plan, of course, was that it was Saturday night. I'd forgotten what day it was in all the stress of the move. Back home on a Saturday night, I'd probably have gone out with Gina, taken the subway to the village and gone to see a movie, or just hung out around Joe's Pizza watching people walk by. Hey, I may be a big city girl, but that doesn't mean my life there was glamorous by any means. I've never even been asked out by a boy, unless you count that time in 5th grade when Daniel Bogue asked me to skate with him during the couples-only song at the Rockefeller Center's ice rink. And then I'd embarrass myself by falling flat on my face. My mom, however, was all anxious for me to throw myself into the social scene of Carmel. As soon as the dishwasher was loaded, she was like, "Brad, what are you doing tonight? Are there any parties or anything? Maybe you could take Suze and introduce her to people." Dopey, who was mixing himself a protein shake, apparently the 24 jumbo shrimps and massive shell steak he consumed at dinner hadn't been filling enough, went, "Yeah, maybe I could, if Jake wasn't working tonight." Sleepy, roused by the mention of his name, squinted down at his watch and said, "Damn!" picked up his jeans and left the house. Doc looked at the clock and made a tisk-tisking noise. Late again. He's going to get himself fired if he doesn't watch it. Sleepy had a job? This was news to me. So I asked, "Where's he work?" "Peninsula Pizza," Doc said. Doc was performing some sort of bizarre experiment that involved the dog and my mother's treadmill. The dog was sitting very patiently on the floor while Doc attached electrodes to small patches of the dog's skin he'd shaved free of fur. The strangest thing was that nobody seemed to mind, least of all the dog. Jake works at a pizza place? Andy, scouring a baking dish in the sink, said, "He delivers for them. Brings home a bundle and tips." "He's saving up," Dopey informed me, a thick white milkshake mustache on his upper lip, "for a Camaro." "Huh," I said. "You guys want me to drop you anywhere?" Andy offered generously. "I'd be happy to. What do you say, Brad? Want to show Suze the action down at the mall?" "Nah," Dopey said, wiping his mouth with the sleeve of his sweatshirt. "Everybody's still up in Tahoe for the break. Next weekend, maybe." I nearly collapsed with relief. The word mall always filled me with a sort of horror. A horror that had nothing to do with the undead. They don't have malls in New York City, but Gina used to love to take the train to this one in New Jersey. Usually after about an hour, I developed sensory overload, and I have to admit, I wasn't that thrilled with the idea of anybody dropping me somewhere. My God, what was wrong with this place? I could see, given the San Andreas fault, subways might not have been such a great idea, but why hadn't anybody established a decent bus system? "I know," Dopey said, slamming his empty glass down. "I'll play you a few games of Cool Borders, Suze." I blinked at him. "You'll what?" "I'll play you a game of Cool Borders." When my expression remained blank, Dopey said, "You never heard of Cool Borders? Come on!" He led me toward the widescreen TV in the den. Cool Borders, it turned out, was a video game. Each player got assigned a snowboarder, and then you had to race each other down various slopes, using a joystick to control how fast the boarder went and what kind of fancy moves they might make. I beat Dopey at it 8 times before he finally said, "Let's watch a movie instead." Sensing that I'd probably erred in some way, I guess I should have let the poor boy win at least once. I tried to make amends by volunteering to supply the popcorn, and went into the kitchen. It was only then that a wave of tiredness hit me. There is a 3-hour time difference between New York and California, so even though it was only 9 o'clock, I was as tired as if it were midnight. Andy and my mom had retired to the massive master bedroom, but they had left the door to it wide open, I guess so that we wouldn't get any wrong idea about what was going on in there. Andy was reading a spy novel, and my mother was watching a made-for-TV movie. This, I was sure, was strictly for the benefit of us kids. Most other Saturday nights, I bet they'd have closed that door, or at least have gone out with Andy's friends or my mom's new colleagues at the TV station in Monterey, where she'd just been hired. They were obviously trying to establish some sort of domestic pattern to make us kids feel secure. You had to give them props for doing their best. I wondered, as I stood there, waiting for the popcorn to pop, what my dad thought of all this. He hadn't been too enthused about Mom's remarrying, even though, as I've said, Andy's a pretty great guy. He'd been even less enthused about my moving to the West Coast. "How," he wanted to know when I told him, "am I going to pop in on you when you're living 3,000 miles away?" "The point, Dad," I said to him, "is that you aren't supposed to be popping in on me. You're supposed to be dead, remember? You're supposed to be doing whatever it is dead people do, not spying on me and Mom." He looked sort of hurt by that. "I'm not spying," he said. "I'm just checking up, to make sure you're happy and all of that." "Well, I am," I assured him. "I'm very happy, and so is Mom." I'd been lying, of course. Not about Mom, but about me. I'd been a nervous wreck at the prospect of moving. Even now, I wasn't really sure it was going to work out. This thing with Jesse? I mean, where was my dad anyway? Why wasn't he upstairs kicking that guy's butt? Jesse was, after all, a boy, and he was in my bedroom, and fathers are supposed to hate that kind of thing. But that's the thing about ghosts. They are never around when you actually need them, even if they happen to be your dad. I guess I must have zoned out for a little while, because the next thing I knew, the microwave was dinging. I took the popcorn out and opened the bag. I was pouring it into a big wooden bowl when my mom came into the kitchen and switched on the overhead light. "Hi, honey," she said. Then she looked at me. "Are you all right, Susie?" "Sure, Mom," I said. I shoveled some popcorn into my mouth. Brad and I are going to watch a movie." "Are you sure?" My mom was peering at me curiously. "Are you sure you're all right?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired is all." She looked relieved. "Oh, yes. Well, I expected you'd have a bit of jet lag, but... Well, it's just that you looked so upset when you first walked into your bedroom upstairs. I know the Academy bed was a bit much, but I couldn't resist." I chewed. I was totally used to this kind of thing. "The bed's fine, Mom," I said. "The room's fine, too." "I'm so glad," my mom said, pushing a strand of hair from my eyes. "I'm so glad you like it, Suze." My mother looked so relieved, I sort of felt sorry for her in a way. I mean, she's a nice lady and doesn't deserve to have a mediator for a daughter. I know I've always been a bit of a disappointment to her. When I turned 14, she got me my own phone line, thinking so many boys would be calling me, her friends would never be able to get through. You can imagine how disappointed she was when nobody except Gina ever called me on my private line, and that was usually only to tell me about the dates she'd been on. Like I said, the boys in my neighborhood were never much interested in asking me out. My poor mom. She always wanted a nice, normal teenage daughter. Instead, she got me. She asked me this right as Doc was coming in to get more glue for his electrodes. Not that I was going to say anything like, "Well, to tell you the truth, Mom, I'd like to change, but I'm not real excited about doing it in front of a ghost of a dead cowboy that's living in my room." Instead, I shrugged and said with more casualness, "Yeah, well, I'm going to change in a bit." "Are you sure you don't want help unpacking? I feel terrible. I should have..." "No, I don't need any help. I'll unpack in a bit." I watched Doc forage through a drawer. "I better go," I said. "I don't want to miss the beginning of the movie." Of course, in the end, I missed the beginning, middle, and end of the movie. I fell asleep on the couch and didn't wake up until Andy shook me by the shoulder a little after 11. "Up and at 'em, kiddo," he said. "I think it's time to admit you've gone down for the count. Don't worry, Brad won't tell anybody." I got up groggily and made my way up to my room. I headed straight for the windows, which I yanked open. To my relief, there was no Jessie to block the way. Yes, I've still got it. I grabbed my duffel bag and went into the bathroom where I showered, and, just to be on the safe side, changed into my pajamas. I didn't know for sure whether or not Jessie had gotten the message and vamoosed. When I came out of the bathroom, I was a little more awake. I looked around, feeling the cool breeze seeping in, smelling the salt in the air. Unlike back in Brooklyn, where our ears were under constant assault by sirens and car alarms, it was quiet in the hills, the only sound the occasional hoot of an owl. I found, to my surprise, that I was alone. Really alone. A ghost-free zone. Exactly what I'd always wanted. I got into bed and clapped my hands, dousing the lights. Then I snuggled deep beneath my crisp new sheets. Just before I fell asleep again, I thought I heard something besides the owl. It sounded like someone singing the words, "Oh, Susanna, now don't you cry for me, 'cause I come from Alabama with this banjo on my knee." But that, I'm sure, was just my imagination.